If you're interested in investing in Brisbane, then this is the video for you. In today's video, I'm going to give you a super detailed look based on my experience from buying over $350 million worth of property in Brisbane in the last 7 years. Now in this video, I'm going to break down the 5 different markets within Brisbane. I'm going to talk about the 3 types of property that I believe has the most upside potential in the future. And I'm going to round out the video by talking about some of the most undervalued suburbs in the city right now. Now there are many things to like about Brisbane at the moment. The number one reason for me is we've got the 2032 Olympic Games. Now if I look back at the history in Sydney between 1997 and 2003, house prices around the Olympic Games went up by 97% and rents during that period almost doubled. If we then look back at the history, according to Homely, over the last 50 years, house prices in Brisbane, when you look at the total return divided by the number of years, have done more than 9.5% per annum. When we look at the big articles coming out in the Financial Review and the Courier Mail, most of the analysts and most of those articles at the moment are forecasting house prices in Brisbane to potentially double between now and the Olympic Games. On top of that, Southeast Queensland, the Sunshine Coast, Brisbane and the Gold Coast are going through an unprecedented infrastructure boom at the moment, and the Australian Bureau of Statistics expect the population in Brisbane to get to about 5 million people, the current size of Sydney and Melbourne, within the next 23 years. Now, one of the most exciting things about Brisbane right now is there are 5 separate markets within the city. You've got the inner city centre, you've got the northern and northern beaches, you've got the southern side and the southern beaches, as well as the eastern side of the city and the western side. Now, what I love most about Brisbane at the moment as both a home buyer and an investor is different markets in Brisbane have done completely different stages of growth. In the last 10 years, there's literally some suburbs within the CBD of Brisbane and on the beaches that have done more than 10% per annum. And then just down the road, a little bit further from the city in parts of South and West Brisbane, we're still finding suburbs that over the same period of time have done 4 to 6% per annum. Now that might not sound like much and it might be a little bit geeky, but statistically I know that when a suburb has done 4 to 6% and it is sitting very close to a suburb that has done 10% growth in the last 10 years, then based on the DSR data from Jeremy Shepherd, there's very strong likelihood and potential that these undervalued suburbs will catch up over time. Now, when it comes to Brisbane, there are 3 very distinct types of properties that I personally like. The first one is the established property, and that comes in 2 different types. You've either got your tenant-ready, high-quality, low-maintenance home ready for you to move into or put your tenant in straight away, or you've got the renovator. We're also seeing many homes, particularly within 7Ks of the CBD, either being knocked down or rebuilt at the moment, or actually lifted and filled in underneath to legal height with extra bedrooms, living spaces and bathrooms. Now, the second type of property I like in Brisbane at the moment is brand new. And again, that comes in 2 different forms. The first option to do brand new would be finding a really shitty older home and knocking it over either on one of the beachside suburbs or one of the inner city suburbs in Brisbane. You can see in suburbs like Cannon Hill, Wavell Heights, Kedron and Bulimba, huge examples of this happening right now, as on the beaches in places like Brighton on the north side or Manly on the eastern side. Now, in many of these instances, these knockdown rebuild properties, you're taking an old Queensland-style shack and building 3, 4, 5 bedroom, double-story, beautiful family homes with pools. The other option for going brand new, building a more standard sort of single-story or double-story, 4-bedroom, lower-cost home. The third type of property I like in Brisbane at the moment is the dual income property. So that could be an established home where you build a granny flat out the back, or it could be actually building a brand new house with a brand new granny flat underneath the one roof line. Now, the Queensland government recently made a change where for the next couple of years, for people that want to do the dual income idea, can actually legally rent that granny flat out to a separate unrelated party. Your average granny flat in Brisbane at the moment costs somewhere around about that $180,000 to $220,000 mark, and depending on the suburb, will rent for between $350 and about $500 per week. Now, statistically speaking, the most undervalued pocket of Brisbane right now, because it's been completely forgotten about by most people over the last 10 years, would be Ipswich or West Brisbane. There's suburbs like Goodna, which are 19 kilometres from the CBD that represent ridiculous value right now, all the way through to suburbs like Brazil, which is about 33, 34 k's from the city. Now, I love that western part of the city at the moment because the population is expected to literally double in size over the next 10 years, going from 190,000 people to around about 400,000 people. The Queensland government has also just decided that Ipswich or West Brisbane will become the second satellite city of Brisbane, which is only sort of 19 to 30 k's down the road. Another undervalued pocket of the city because it's had a poor brand name in the past is South Brisbane. So this is the area of Logan, which is about 19 to about 35 kilometres directly south of the CBD, in between Brizzy and the Goldie. Now, at the moment, you can buy houses in the Logan area for between $500,000 and about $700,000 that tick that renovator box, that box for a place with a granny flat potential, or the really high quality tenant ready move-in homes. The last two parts of the city where I see massive potential that I believe are statistically undervalued at the moment are the northern beaches in Brisbane, sort of that Redcliffe Peninsula, or the southern beaches in Brisbane around about that Redland Bay area. Now, both of these areas statistically have, depending on the suburb, only done between 6 and about 7% per annum for the last 10 years, which means when comparing them with suburbs closer to the city on the beach like Manly that have done more like 10% a year over the same time, look statistically very, very undervalued at the moment. Now, what I love about the north and southern beaches at the moment is there's some extremely affordable property around about that 700K mark. And then there's these beautiful homes that have been fully renovated and knocked down and rebuilt, selling well into the $1 million to $1.5 million marks right now. Now, according to an article in the Financial Review last year where 7 different analysts looked at the north and southern beaches of the city of Brisbane, all of them are expecting house prices to go from an average of $700K in 2022 to, before the Olympic Games, an average house price of somewhere between 1.3 and 1.5 million, which for me as a homeowner or as an investor sounds amazing. Now, I don't know what's going to happen, and I certainly don't believe we're going to see gains that strong, but who am I to say? The last thing I wanted to touch on is the population growth and infrastructure coming into Brisbane at the moment. Now, according to the ABS, the Queensland Government, SQM Research and CoreLogic, pound for pound, there is an unprecedented amount of infrastructure going into Brisbane. In the city alone, we've got the metro, which is a significant piece of infrastructure connecting about 8 to 10 new train stations, and for the first time going underneath the city in the rail. We've also got heavy and light rail going into both the Gold Coast and Sunshine Coast at the moment. We've got all of the infrastructure going into the Olympics in terms of the M1, the M3, the M6s in Brisbane, all getting upgrades. Many of the train stations and many of the sports stadiums as well. And then we've got the massive new CBD going into Maroochydore on the Sunshine Coast, as well as Southport on the Gold Coast. On top of this, the Brisbane Airport has just gone through a major upgrade, as has the Sunshine Coast and Gold Coast airports, to make way not for just the tourists that are coming in, but for all the business people and investors as well. From my personal experience looking at CoreLogic and Homely's data over the last 50 years, generally what we see is house prices in Sydney and Melbourne going ballistic, it getting too expensive there about once every 10 years, and people looking at Brisbane as an option where they can find jobs and more affordable property with a great lifestyle. I believe, based on the long-term cycle from Phil Anderson, that Brisbane is going to look extremely good in the next 3 to 4 years, and we'll have some incredible opportunity over the next 15 to 20. Now, for those of you sitting there thinking seriously about buying your own home or an investment in Brisbane, then I would love to offer you a one-on-one strategy session where you can talk to myself or my brother Simon about exactly where you are right now. We'd like to be longer term. We can go deep into the Brisbane market and talk about the pros and cons of the different suburbs in Brisbane right now. And then you can take that with a grain of salt and either go and smash it on your own or potentially become one of the extremely small number of clients we take on each month to help buy great investment property in Brisbane. Either way, I absolutely wish you all the best, and I'm so excited about what's coming for Brisbane in the future.
Woo! That's a wrap.
That's a wrap.
Getting cool, bro. Yeah. Oh, sweaty. So sweaty. Oh, that's good. Look at that.
So nice, eh?
Oh.